Hi everyone, my name's Narelle and welcome to my video tutorial where I'll be showing you how I design a card in Cricut Design Space. I'll be covering adding shapes to the canvas, adding, aligning and attaching score lines, slicing shapes out of other shapes, and using the X and Y coordinates to position images. My starting point for creating designs usually comes from Pinterest or YouTube. I'll often see a project that someone's created using dies in a trimmer and think I could recreate that in Design Space. And the project that I'm going to be making in today's video is a project that was shared by Jennifer McGuire called an inside tunnel card. I've been watching Jennifer's videos for many years. She makes amazing cards, all without using an electronic die cutting machine, and you'll find the link to her video below so that you can see how she assembles the base card and how she embellishes it. And be sure to check out the info below her video for links to the products that she uses. Before I start designing in Design Space, I usually watch the video and take notes of the sizes and types of shapes that I'm going to need, along with the position of any score lines that I need to add. And here's my design sheet for the circle tunnel card that I created as I watched Jennifer's video. Once I've done that, I can start creating the project in Design Space. So here's how I went about creating this project. I'm going to be referring to my design sheet, which shows that I need to add an 8.5 by 5.5 inch rectangle. To do that, I go to the Shapes button on the Design panel and click the square shape. And because I want this to be a rectangle, I go up to the Edit bar and click on the lock that's between the width and height boxes. That unlocks the shape, which allows me to now go and change the width and height measurements individually. So now I can type in 8.5 in the width and 5.5 in the height. So there's my rectangle done. Now I'll go and change the colour of this rectangle so that you can see the score lines a little bit better when I add them. To do that, I go back up to the Edit bar and you'll see this little coloured box that's beside the line type option. Just click on that and then you can select another colour from the colour palette. So there's my first shape done. Now looking at my design sheet, I know that I need to add a score line to score this piece in half. So I go back to the Shapes button and this time I'm going to select the score line. And when you add a score line to your project, it always defaults to a vertical score line. If you ever need to change this to a horizontal score line, you can either go up to the Rotate button here and just type in 90, which will change that to a horizontal score line, or I'll just undo that. Your other option to change that is to hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and then grab that Rotate button there and just drag that down until your shape or your score line is horizontal. But my score line needs to be vertical, so I'm just going to click Undo to get that back to how it originally was. Now my score line needs to be the same height as my rectangle, so I'm going to go back up to the Edit bar and go into the height box there and type in 5.5. Now I don't need to worry about clicking on the unlock button on this because score lines can only be changed in one direction, so I can only change the height or the width. So I'll press enter there and now my score line is 5.5, which is the same height as the rectangle. So now I'm going to center this on the square. So to do that, I'm going to select both of these objects and then I'm going to go Align and I'm going to select Center. Now I could click Center horizontally and then click Center vertically, but by just selecting Center it's going to do both. So I'll click that and now my score line is centered in the middle of my card. So looking at my design sheet, I know that I need to cut off 1/2 inch from the right hand side of this card. So there's a couple of ways that I can do that. The longest way is to select the Shapes button, add a square and change that to 1/2 inch wide by 5.5 inches in height. I can align that with the right hand and the top side of my rectangle. So to do that, I would select that small rectangle, the blue rectangle, and then select align top, and align right. With those two selected, I click the slice button, and that takes off that 1/2 inch off the side of my rectangle. Now my score line has disappeared to the back, so all I need to do here is select arrange and center back, and there's my score line. Now the score line's still in the correct position because I didn't have that selected when I did any of these steps. So that was the longest way to do it. The quickest way to do that, and I'm going to undo this so I can show you. So as I said, the quickest way to do that is just to select that blue rectangle, go up to the top here, make sure it's unlocked. In my case it's now locked again, so I'm going to click on that and just go and change the width of that rectangle. So I'll change that to 8, and now my rectangle is the correct size, and you'll notice that the score line again didn't change or move because I didn't have that selected when I changed the width of this rectangle. So now what I need to do is I'll select both of those. I'm going to attach that score line to my rectangle, so I select both of them and then go down to the bottom there and select attach. And now that that first piece is done, I'll just move that off to the side, ready to do our next piece. Now I need another 8.5 by 5.5 inch rectangle, so I'll do the same steps that I did before. I click shapes, square, and this time while I'm here I'm going to add that score line, and I'll go and quickly change the colour, and now I'll change the size of this square to 8.5 by 5.5. So again I unlock that shape, put in 8.5 by 5.5, and then I'll change the height of my score line also to 5.5. Now in this piece I need 2 score lines the same, so I'll just, with this one selected, I'll go over to the layers panel and I'll click duplicate and then click that again, and now I've got my 3 score lines. So I'll just move those away from each other. Now I want all of these score lines to be aligned at the top of this rectangle, so I select all 4 pieces and click align and align top. So now we need to go and position these score lines where they need to be. So the first one needs to be at 0.5, the second one needs to be at 4.25, and the last one at 4.75. So here's the easiest way to do that. I'm going to select all of those and I'm going to move the whole thing so that it sits on 0 on my x-axis. So I'll go up to position in that X box there, I type 0, and now it's going to be much easier for me to change the measurements of here. So I'll click on the first one, I'm going to make that sit at 0.5. My second one is going to be at 4.25, and my last one at 4.75. So there's my 3 score lines all in the correct position, and now I need to again attach these score lines to the rectangle so that they stay in that position when we get to the cut screen. So to do that, I've dragged my mouse around the rectangle and the score lines. If by chance you don't manage to catch all of those score lines, you can hold down the shift key and click on the one that you missed in the layers panel here, but I did manage to catch all of them. So now I just go back down to the bottom again and click attach. So there's my second piece done. Again I'll move that over to the side, and we've got one more piece to do. My final piece is a rectangle that's slightly less than 4.25 by 5.5. So I'll go to the shapes button, select my square, and I also need a score line in this one too, so I'll grab that at the same time. So let's change this again to blue, and I'm going to make this, to start with I'm going to make it exactly 4.25 by 5.5. I'm going to make my score line the same height, 5.5. So now I just need to resize this slightly so that it's just a tiny little bit smaller. So I make sure that it's still unlocked, so I can see that that lock is in the unlock position, and you'll also see that on the bottom left here that there's another way that you can lock and unlock. So if I can click that there, and it does exactly the same thing as clicking it on the edit bar up here. So with that unlocked, I'm going to grab this green resize handle here, and I'm just going to move that up and to the left ever so slightly so that it just changes that rectangle so it's a tiny little bit smaller than its original size. So while I've got that there, I'm going to take a note of the height because I'm going to need that shortly. So I'm just going to quickly write that down, and then I can go on to my next step. So my first step here now is obviously to change the score line so that it's the same height as the rectangle is now, and that was 5.444, so I'll change that up here. And then I need to go and add to this piece a second score line of the same size. So with that one selected, I go over to duplicate, and now I've got my two score lines. So I'll just move these score lines so that they're on top of that rectangle there, and then I'm going to align them to the top. So we'll grab all three, select Align and Align Top, and now we need to position these two score lines where they need to be, and they need to be 0.25 of an inch from the left and right hand side. So here's a really quick way to do that. Again, I'm going to grab all three and move them over to 0. I'm going to get my first score line here, and I'm going to position that at 0.25. Now normally to calculate where this right hand score line needs to be, I would click on the rectangle, and if it had been its original size of 4.25, that would have been easy to calculate. It would have just been 4.25 minus 0.25, which would have told me to position this at 4 inches, but my rectangle's now a slightly odd size. So here's a quick way that I found to work out, or not to even have to work out, but how to position this right hand score line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my first score line and my rectangle, and to do that I clicked on the score line and then held down the shift key and clicked on the blue rectangle, and then I'm going to go up to the flip button here. I'm going to click on the flip button and then select flip horizontal. So now it's moved that score line over to the right hand side, and it's now in the correct position. And so then I'll grab this second score line, and again I'm going to position that at 0.25. So now both of my score lines are in their correct position. This one's at 0.25 and this one is at 3.986. And that is 0.25 of an inch from the right hand side of that rectangle. So now with both of those score lines selected, again I'll click all three and attach those score lines, and now we're ready to move on to our next step. Now I'm going to bring the second piece back in, and what I need to do now is add a circle here that's going to be sliced into this blue piece that's going to sit in between the first and the second score lines. So first thing I'm going to do is move that over to 0, and I'm going to make it so that it's sitting on 2 inches, and that's for no other reason than it just makes it easier for me to position things when I have an exact measurement to start with. So now I'm going to go to my shapes button and I'm going to select a circle because that's the shape that I want here. I'm going to make that circle 3.25 inches. I don't need to unlock that because I want it to stay in proportion. So when I change the width, it's also going to change the height to the same size. So there I've got my 3.25 inch circle. Now I've got to work out how do I center that between this first and second score line. So I can't select all of this and select center because that's going to actually center it right in the middle of that blue rectangle. Even if I had selected just center horizontally, it still wouldn't have worked because it again wants to center that on that entire blue rectangle. So here's an easy way that I found to get that to work. So I'm going to go back to my shapes here and I'm going to select a square, and I'm going to make this square the same width as the space between my first and second score lines. Now I happen to know that that's 3.75 inches, so now I'm going to go up here and change that to 3.75, and then I'll position that on this at the same position that that first score line is, which is half an inch, and that's actually where I've placed it there. Now I need it to be a little bit longer, so I'm just going to unlock this and I'll just make this about 5 inches longer. It doesn't need to be the same height as the rectangle, because I'm only using this grey rectangle as a guide. So now I'm going to take my circle, I'll bring that to the front so you can see what's actually happening, and I'll change the colour to something else. So now what I can do is I can actually centre this circle horizontally on this rectangle. First I'm going to position it where I want this to be from the top. So I've positioned that rectangle at 2 inches, so this one I'm going to bring that down and place it at 2.5 inches. So that means the circle is going to be cut out half an inch from the top of that rectangle. So once I've done that, now it's just a matter of centering this circle horizontally on this grey square. So to do that, I'm going to select the circle and the grey square, and you may not actually see much of a difference here because I think I'm pretty close to centre anyway, but I'll do that now. I'll go align and centre horizontally, and you can see that it moved just ever so slightly to the right. So now I can grab that grey rectangle and move it out of the way, and that circle is now centred horizontally between those two score lines, and it's positioned at half an inch down from the top of my blue rectangle. So now I can actually go and slice that out of this blue piece. Now my score lines are attached to the blue rectangle, which means I need to go and detach those, otherwise I won't be able to slice. So you see, if I go and select all of that now and then try and slice, you can see that slice isn't actually able to be selected, it's greyed out. So what I do is I go click on that blue rectangle, I select detach, and my score lines are now detached from that rectangle, and my circle has been placed behind there. Now it doesn't matter that it's behind there, I can still cut it out, but just so that you can see how this is actually going to work, I'll click on that and I'll bring that to the front. So you can see my circle's there, so I'm going to have that selected and that blue rectangle. You can see my score lines over here are still white, which means they're not selected, and down here slice is now available. So I'll click on that, and that's now sliced that circle into that blue rectangle. So I'll grab that one there and I'll drag that out of the way. Now when you use slice in Design Space, it always keeps your original shape as well as giving you another of exactly the same shape. So now I need to go and click on that circle, and I can also move that out of the way, and you can see that now I've got that circle sliced into my blue rectangle. Now my score lines have been positioned behind here, so again I just select this, I'll send that to the back, and there's my 3 score lines. So now I can select all of that again and reattach them. So that's that second piece there done with the circle attached, and now I need to bring in this other piece, because this one also needs to have a circle cut out of it, but it'll be a smaller circle than this one. So what I can do is I can actually just use the original circle that I did before and change the size. So that one I'm going to make 2.75, and when I've sliced this into this piece, you'll be able to see that it's about half an inch smaller, or a quarter of an inch smaller, sorry, all the way around. Now we need to position this second circle on this smaller rectangular piece, and we want it to be positioned vertically so that it's sitting at the correct space from the top of our card. So if we go and have a look at Jennifer's sample, you can see the first circle is positioned, and I think she's got it about 1 inch from the top, and then the second one would be about 1 1/4 inches from the top. So in my version here, I've actually placed it at 1/2 inch from the top, which means I need to place the second one at 1.75 inches from the top. So we'll go and do that first. So let's go and grab this piece here, and we're going to move that over to back to 0, because I always find it easier to do this when I place them on the 0. And then I'm going to just bring the whole thing down, and I'll place that at about 8 inches so that we've got some clear space. Now I'll grab this blue circle. So as I said, the first circle there I had positioned at 0.5 from the top. So the second one is going to be at 0.75 from the top. So I've got this rectangle at 8 inches, so I'm going to add 0.75 to that, which means this circle is going to be positioned at 8.75. And then, now that I've got it at the correct position vertically, I can then go ahead and just center this circle horizontally on this rectangle. So I'll select that and the rectangle, select align and center horizontally, and now I can go and slice that into this rectangle. Again, I need to go and detach my score lines, and then go and grab that circle and my rectangle, and then I'm going to select slice. So you can see this time I left the circle at the back. As I said, you don't need to bring that to the front to be able to slice. It's going to work anyway. So there's that first original circle, and then sitting there is the second one that I've just cut out. Now it's actually sitting behind this blue rectangle, so to grab that I actually need to go and get that from the layers panel, and that's going to be this one here. So I don't need that one anymore, so I'll just go and click the X there, and that will remove that. So there's my second piece with the circle now cut out of it. Again, my score lines have been positioned at the back, so I can just grab this rectangle here and say send back, and there's my two score lines back again. So I'll select all of that and click attach. Now I'm going to move this up over the top of this one so that you can see that it's actually been positioned correctly. Now you can't really tell because I've got it sitting on the front, so what I'm going to actually do is, so you can get a good look at how this looks, I'll take this one and I want to change the colour of this. Now at the moment, because I've got the score lines attached, I can't go and change the colour, but to do that without detaching, all I need to do is go over to the layers panel and just click on just that blue rectangle, and you can see that now the colour change option is available again. So I can go in there and I'll just change that to a different colour. I'm going to change this and move it to the back, and now you can see as I move this up here, it's going to be at the correct position. So I'm going to place that at 2 so that it's the same as my blue rectangle. Well, not X2, that was the wrong one. We needed to change that at Y to 2. And then you can see that it's at the correct position down, and then if I just move that over slightly here, it will show you that it's now in the correct position. And now that we've done all of that, that's basically the card designed and ready to be cut. So you just need to do a little bit of housekeeping here and delete any pieces that you may not want, and we would need to change the colour of some of these back to what they originally were. So if you want this inside piece here to be the same as this one here, we'll just go in there and change that back to blue. So again, I need to go over to the layers panel here, select on the piece that I want to change the colour to, and then go and change that back to blue. And then if we look again at Jennifer's sample, she's used the extra pieces that were cut out, and she's used those on the front of the card. So to do that, for example, if you want the larger piece here to be behind, you might want to change that to white so that it will cut out on a different mat. So you've got your two pieces there that are going to be layered, and then have another look at that card and just see if there are any other layers that you need to keep or get rid of. So in this case, I know that I don't need this grey rectangle anymore, so I can get rid of that, and then I'll bring in my other pieces. So there's my basically all the shapes that I would need to make that card, apart from all the embellishments. For example, in this case, Jennifer's used this stamp set and these little ferns. So just have a look at the shapes that you've got in your SVGs or the shapes that are in Design Space, whatever it is that you want to add to your finished card. So I hope you found this useful and you picked up a trick or two that you didn't know about. If you do go and make a version of this card yourself, I'd love to see you go and post the results in my Facebook group, Cricut Explore, Maker and More. I'll share the link to my finished design if you'd like to use that, and you'll find the link in the comments below this video. Don't forget to check out Jennifer's video so you can see how it's put together, and also please thank and support her by purchasing through the links under her video if you can. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. If you have any questions or requests for further tutorials, please comment below and I'll do my best to help you out. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.